Hello and welcome to a new lesson. It's now time to talk about the properties. And the properties is really what makes the animation work. For example, here I have a red square. It's a shape layer. Now on the timeline you can see that we have the layer name. We have some other options that we will look at later. And here you have an arrow, kind of like an arrow pointing to the right, and if you click on it, it drops some other menus. You can see the contents, where it shows what we have. This is the rectangle, and here is the transform. If you open this, you will see many things. You will see anchor point, you will see position, scale, rotation, and opacity. These are really important, uh, especially the position, the scale, and the rotation. These are really important to create an animation, because these attributes, working with the keyframes that we will look at later, will work great together to create a nice animation. So, for example, let's go from the top to the bottom. If I have the anchor point here, you can see the anchor point is this little target that you see here. The anchor point right now is out of this rectangle. So if I change the rotation, you can see how it rotates around this anchor point. So if I want this rectangle to rotate on itself, I have to change the anchor point to this point, to the middle of the square. And to change the anchor point, we need a different tool, which is this one, the pan behind tool, which is also called the anchor point tool. If you click on it, you can take this anchor point and place it wherever you want. If you want to place it here, if you want to place it here, here, whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to place it here on the middle of the square. And now if I change the rotation, you can see how it rotates on itself. If I move this anchor point here, it will rotate here. So that's pretty much what the anchor point does. Let's change the anchor point to the middle again. And now let's go to the position. The position is, as the name says, the position that the object has on the composition. You can see on this part that we have a lot of numbers, and these numbers are just the pixels where this rectangle is on the composition. For example, if I move this one, it will move on this axis, and if I move this one, the right one, this will move on the y-axis. Of course, you can type manually this. For example, if I hit 1000, or if I input 2000, I can manually move it, but you can do it as whatever you want. So let's change the position. Of course, you can change the position here just by clicking on the object and placing it wherever you want, but sometimes it's better to use this position because maybe it's a little more accurate. So that's it for the position. We now have the scale attribute, which of course it's really obvious what it does. It just scales the object. And this little link here, this little chain, is just for constraining proportions. If you remove this, you can scale it independent. Okay, let's set it to 100 each size. And next we have the rotation. The rotation is really simple to use. If we change the angle, it changes to on the object, and as I showed you before, it depends on where the anchor point is. If the anchor point is on this corner, then the object will rotate on this object. And finally, we have the opacity, which is of course really simple to use too. Right now is on 100, and we can change this to 0, and it disappears. If we change it more, you can see a little more of the object until you reach the 100%. And those are the properties that we can change here on After Effects. We're going to use a lot of them to create any animation or anything that we are going to do on After Effects. We're going to be using these properties a lot. So what happens if I have, for example, another instance of this shape, and I have a lot of layers here? I don't want to open all these attributes because it's really uncomfortable. As you can see, it's really bad to work with like this because it takes so much space. What if I want to change a single property? I don't want to change the scale, the rotation, and the opacity, but just the position, for example. Then what we're going to do is to select the layer and press a key on our keyboard. For example, if we want to change the position, you press the P on your keyboard and it opens the position attributes only. If you hit S, it will open the property, the scale property. If you hit T, you can change the opacity. And if you hit the R key, you can change the rotation. So it's really simple, and it's way easier to work like this instead of opening all the attributes, because you can see that they take a lot of space here on the timeline. So that's it for the attributes. As you can see, they are really important, and on the next lesson we are going to talk about the keyframes, and you're going to see a lot more of these attributes. So see you on the next one.